Now this, QAnon conspiracy theories are being pushed further towards the mainstream in Europe, according to a news report. Analysis by NewsGuard has discovered that unfounded theories have merged with local online conspiracy groups in France, Germany, Italy and the UK, with misinformation websites contributing to the spread of QAnon content. The claim lies in the heart of QAnon, a wild conspiracy theory that believes politicians, A-list celebrities and a deep state of bureaucrats promote things like child sex abuse. In his column in The Times this week, David Aranovich discussed how QAnon is the first online cult and it's a danger in the real world too. He's with us now. David, afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
I remember talking with you when your book about conspiracy theories came out, and it feels about half an hour ago. You're going to tell me it was something like 10 years back or something.
It was.
Yeah. And I think one of the things we discussed then was, will we ever live in a time when these mad theories have kind of gone away? Far from it, it seems. Not only have they not gone away, and some of the beauties still remain, of course, on the shelves for all to see, but new ones are arriving all the time. And this is particularly interesting, this QAnon phenomenon, because it's, as you describe it, it's kind of the first online cult.
Yeah, I mean, when we spoke 10 years ago, I think I was rather more hopeful that we'd see some of these conspiracy theories off. I mean, some conspiracy theories are relatively harmless. Who cares if somebody thinks that the moon landings were faked?
Yeah.
And some of them much more harmful. So those that target particular groups, obviously Jewish people and so on, believing in a kind of world conspiracy involving Jews, can be the background to appalling actions by the people who believe these things. And we know that from history. But I kind of thought that with the advent of the internet, although there would be more of these ideas around, it would also be quicker to squash them, quicker to give people the real facts, quicker to kind of get out there and say, look, you've got the wrong end of the stick here and here's why. What I didn't realise was that social media was just around the corner in a really kind of huge way, and that it would actually be nearly impossible to correct things that you couldn't see happening for the most part, because they happened in Facebook groups that you weren't part of, WhatsApp groups that you couldn't see, and so on. And the second thing that I really didn't factor in was 1 year after I published that book, Donald Trump embraced the birther theory that Barack Obama was actually a secret Kenyan. It was actually a conspiracy theory I dealt with in the book. It never occurred to me, not in a million years, that somebody who espoused a theory like that would actually become first a candidate for a major party and then the president.
And then become the president.
And he's not the only one.
Indeed.
So you have other believers in conspiracy theories who've become other significant leaders throughout the world. And that's the background, if you like, to QAnon.
Yeah, tell us about QAnon then. What are these guys up to? What's the core of their belief system?
Well, it's really odd, and it really couldn't happen without social media. So essentially, going back to 2016, you remember when WikiLeaks got the leaks from the Democratic National Committee and John Podesta, who was Hillary Clinton's chief of staff, and put them out during the course of the presidential election. Well, in them, the chief of staff, John Podesta, was talking quite a lot about pizza. And some bright spark decided, who was kind of, these numerologists who look through things and try and find out patterns that don't exist, decided that actually the word pizza was mentioned an awful lot. Pizza and cheese pizza being apparently internet slang child pornography, decided that what he'd uncovered was a pornographic ring. And then they kind of narrowed it down because there was a photograph of some pizza shop owner to a pizza house in Washington, D.C., where supposedly children were being tortured in the basement. And this even led to a guy going out there with an assault rifle, a guy from North Carolina, to try and free the children from the basement that didn't exist. And this was sort of the beginning of it. A few months after that, some chap appears on 4chan, one of the internet platforms, and says, my name is Q, effectively, I'm paraphrasing. I'm an insider inside the intelligence system. And I can tell you that right now there is a battle going on between this deep state and these celebrities and these families like the Clintons, the Bushes and the Obamas, who were responsible for child pornography. They did 9/11, and they are organizing to take over the countries along with the bankers. They already have the media in their pockets. There is going to be a great big reckoning coming. And from that developed this incredible network of people calling themselves, who would use the letter Q, calling themselves part of the QAnon network. They even formulated a slogan for themselves, where we go one, we go all, and replicated throughout the United States and now increasingly, as you've seen, in Europe. And it's a sort of compendium of conspiracy theories. But one of the things that makes them different is the fact that people spend a vast amount of time, their members, online with each other, forming a kind of community, and talking this up together. So much so that not a few of these people have become estranged from their families, who they won't see because they say they don't understand the true things that are going on in the world. And at that point, it ceases to be, if you like, conspiracy theory and becomes more like a cult. Cult members, albeit mostly online, although they do actually have some meetings, etc., forswear to a large extent their families and their friends and so on to take part in the cult's discussions and so on, all aided in the past by things like the YouTube algorithm that sends people more of what they've already begun, puts them in contact with things, and what we call the rabbit hole. You fall down the rabbit hole, you find one theory, that takes you to the next, takes you to the next YouTube. And actually, one of the symbols that the QAnon people use is a rabbit going down the queue.
Yeah. And am I right in saying, David, that they kind of see Donald Trump as some kind of saviour of the bad things that are going on, child sacrifice and all manner of other horrible things?
Yeah, so something that Donald Trump said in 2017 about the coming storm meant that they began to believe that Donald Trump was referring to the fact that he was in cahoots with the people like Q, who would take down and eradicate these enemies of civilization and the world, and that he was, if you like, the leader of the goodies against this sort of great army of baddies. And so they did begin to see, and they began turning up at Trump rallies, waving banners with Q on them. Trump is very much seen as their guy. And this July the 4th, his former national security advisor, Michael Flynn, who's a 3-star general and had been defense intelligence chief, actually, back in 2014. This is how senior this guy is. Recorded a video of himself and his family doing the oath of allegiance, after which they all intoned, "Where we go one, we go all." And the hashtag they used, "Take the oath," was the one used by the QAnon people. Yeah. This is not, as they say, normal.
Anything. There's got to be another book in this, David, surely.
You'd think, wouldn't you?
Well, the one thing I've noticed as well is things like the anti-vax. I think when we spoke then, and certainly, at the time I would interview people like Alex Jones, all these people that you're familiar with, and these kind of characters. We talk about anti-vaxxers as this thing that was around in the States, and of course I'm seeing much more of that over here now. Lots of people very proudly putting it on their Twitter tag that they are anti-vaxxers, and that seems to have been transported wholesale from the US to the UK.
Yeah, you could argue that in many ways we actually started it with the MMR problems back in 2000 and 1998 with Andrew Wakefield's now fraudulent research and discredited research, and some of it went over there. But there's always been an anti-vaccination movement. There's always been a group of people in society who believe that the government is trying to poison them. This kind of goes back centuries. The government's putting fluoride in the water in order to poison us or to kind of get rid of our fertility or something. Chemtrails in the sky, those things in the sky are chemtrails, and people are putting chemicals out there to mind control the society. It's an amazingly popular theme. And anti-vax is a kind of belief that somehow or other big pharma for profit and these sort of people who run the world are trying to force you to take things that are bad for you and unnatural for you. And it actually combines with, if you like, the sort of natural health type people and alternative therapy type people who believe that somehow or other putting this kind of into your body represents an unnatural practice. So it dovetails into that. So you get very low levels of vaccination take-up, for example, down in a place like Totnes, where you have a very high level of, if you like, sort of alternative therapy type people.
I always say to people, David, whenever we discuss this, if you're bored and you've got nothing better to do, go on YouTube and check out some of the, in the case we've been discussing, the QAnon people waxing lyrical about their belief system, because it's a highly entertaining way to spend an hour.
It is, if you're not taken in by it. And as you come to the next bit, of course, because we feel fairly safe with this kind of material. But I was listening to some interviews with people who had become real kind of QAnon fanatics, not the normal young blokes who kind of go in for this sort of thing, but in some cases in America, older women. And it came from a place of disappointment, of powerlessness, a feeling, I've kind of worked all my life and I've kind of got nothing. People who've lost their homes in the subprime in 2008, not necessarily the absolute sharpest knives in the drawer, but nevertheless, people who had an expectation of a reasonable degree of autonomy and life, sure, who felt disappointed and were really looking around for one great big explanation which would show that somebody had been in control of it all and it hadn't been the result of accidents. And therefore, if you could kind of somehow deal with them, maybe you kind of get back to a state of grace.
It could be that. I'll let you get back to your news wall and take your soma, David. Thank you. Always good to talk. David Aranovich, columnist at The Times, who's written brilliantly on a lot of this stuff. It's incredibly it's fascinating to see the mobilization of these kind of theories. And this one, as David said, it's gone sort of beyond a conspiracy theory and moved kind of into an online cult. And that's where it kind of takes a sort of Jonestown-esque sort of vibe, as I think he alluded to in his column. And they're out there. Have a look at them. Just go on YouTube and check out the QAnon people. They're believing this stuff. Hillary was involved in it all, and Donald's there. He's going to save the world from the deep state and these terrible things that are going on. We've had a version of it in this country. We had politicians stand up in Parliament and talked about the paedophile rings of Westminster, etc. And it's all part and parcel of that. It's been going on for years. People have made these allegations, and once in a while there is a genuine story, and of course that's used as totemic proof of what they'd thought all along. It's not, but it doesn't stop those conspiracies from kind of growing and compounding.